My name is Pat Riley. I had an eye doctor appointment, and I'd been going to, and I had surgery, and I had good interpreters with me. And then more and more deaf people had started going to this clinic. They had heard, and then someone went there and got a contract with this doctor's office. And they stopped using the interpreter they had been using with me, that I had been using since I had my surgery. They sent another woman interpreter and found out that this lady couldn't stand to see the sight of needles. Every time I had an injection in my eye, she had to turn around and face the wall. The male interpreter that I had previously, he was able to stand right in front of me, and the doctor would say, don't move, and the interpreter told me right away not to move. But the female interpreter, she couldn't do it. She said if she didn't have to do that, she would pass out. So she had to turn around and face the wall and stand behind me. I was not happy with this interpreter. I asked the doctor's office and the nurse that was on duty that contract with interpreters. They refused to change to go back to the original interpreter that I was using. So they made phone calls, and we argued over this interpreter situation. So I was just stuck with this one interpreter who couldn't look at me, and so I had to remember what to do from what the doctor told me, what he told me before with the other interpreter, like don't move, so I knew what not to do. Now this time, like, the doctor now touches my shoulders and tells me not to move. So I'm just really, really careful when I go to those appointments. I was very happy with the first interpreter that I had been using until this lady by the name of Linda Booth ran to this office and she got a contract. And after that, they were forcing me, saying I couldn't use the interpreter that I was using before. I had to use DHIS interpreters. This lady that was coming, she couldn't stand the sight of needles, and she was from DHIS. The original interpreter I had was awesome. He was from a different agency. I had to go to ER and had some tests done, and I was waiting. The interpreter arrived. Before I had really time to talk with her, the doctor had come into the room with my test results of one of the tests that I had done. She started going over the test results, and the interpreter was interpreting. And then I noticed that she said one word, she sort of signed it differently. Then she went back to ASL again. And then again, she was doing something differently. And then she went back to ASL. And then one time she had made these facial expressions, and she said HYPER. I don't know. So I had to ask her, I said, do you mean hypertension? And she said, oh, yes. That's what the word is. And so she, but I don't know what that means. And I looked at the interpreter and I says, it means high blood pressure. And she said, oh. And then after the doctor had left the room, and then I was asking the interpreter some questions. I says, where do you typically work at? And she says, I work in Ypsilanti, in Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor area. I said, are there a lot of deaf people in that area? She said, well, I tend to interpret in schools. I said, wait, they sent me a school interpreter in an emergency room? I couldn't understand. She couldn't even understand medical terminology. And the interpreter works for DHIS. I was in the hospital for a few days. At night, I noticed that there was a male interpreter that showed up to stay overnight in my room with me. And he slept most of the time. But having a male interpreter, and in the middle of the night when I needed to get up, I had to call the nurse on my call button, but the interpreter was sleeping most of the time. And he was a DHIS interpreter. He slept all night in the room. I don't think that's appropriate to have a male interpreter all night in my room with a male patient. I just don't think that's appropriate. I filed with the state after I had sent them faxes asking them not to send me that interpreter again. They kept sending me that interpreter, so I filed the complaint with the state. And then after that, every time I had any doctor's appointment, the interpreters I would be getting from DHIS, they tend to have worse skills. Sometimes they would sign too fast. I said, and my daughter told them my mom needed one-on-one because of my vision. But they kept sending me, any interpreter they wanted to send. And I really couldn't understand them. So I would just say, oh, forget it. I would ask my daughter to please explain to me what the doctors were saying. So, but she just kept giving me some really underqualified interpreters.